Coach Dezotell, thank you for joining me today on this simple coach-to-coach interview. Do appreciate, as always, you taking the time, and it's always great seeing you. I love our conversations.
Yeah, great to see you. Thanks for doing what you do. We appreciate it. I feel like this is my cathartic. I get to wrap up the year. So when you reached out, I was like, actually, my brain hasn't stopped thinking about our season since it ended. So let's do this, and then I can personally move on to 2025.
You know what? I know my YouTube influencing is very powerful, but it's taken a new level knowing that I'm the wrap-up point for your season. So
Yeah, it's therapy. So
you can lie down if you want, and I'll ask you questions. Hey, before we really begin, dude, many congratulations. I think it literally just came out today. You were inducted to the Vermont Sports Hall of Fame. I think that's pretty kicking. But it's not for soccer. Is it for Nordic skiing?
it's probably for both. Probably for both. Thanks. I appreciate that. I didn't even. It's funny. I was not paying any attention. I worked from home today and I wasn't paying any attention. Went and ran a couple of errands, and then I came out from a store and I had like 7 text messages, and I was like, "How does anyone know about this?" And then realized our nice SID put it up on the website.
Yeah.
So no, very cool, very humbling. I'm a Vermonter. It's my home state. So
Yeah.
to be inducted into a Hall of Fame like that's really cool. I don't belong there, but it's cool. There's a lot of Olympians and a lot of ski racers and a lot of winter sport athletes, and then some people that I know and I look up to athletically. So it'll be cool. It reminds you of just when I used to be younger and more athletic and not old and slow. And, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, regardless, hey, congratulations. That's fantastic. I think probably maybe in Vermont's case, the soccer helped you because, right, like the sports when the snow melts, like you got to find guys who are good when the snow melts. So, but yeah, congratulations. Fantastic.
Thanks. Yeah, I very much appreciate it.
All right. So why we're here, brass tacks, without any undue YouTube influencing on my part. Tell me how you think your season went.
Yeah. For 2 months, 2.5 months, the best season I've, ever been a part of. In the NESCAC, obviously the strength of schedule that we play, is, incredible.
Especially this year, it seemed to be like off the charts.
I think that's the thing. I think every year you start to I'm doing it right now. Right? I'm sure coaches are. Where you look around, you see who lost which players from which team, and you think oh, maybe that team will be down a little bit next year. And it's just it doesn't happen. And I think I think we're the same. I think we're gonna be really good next year until we're confident in that, even with the losses that we'll have. But I mean, I've done this for 21 seasons, and ultimately you lose on penalty kicks. You do lose, but technically, officially, we never lost a soccer game in the course of a college soccer season. So obviously you're looking for silver linings when the season ends and it doesn't, end ultimately in a national championship or a Final Four or something when you feel like you could have been there. And unfortunately, we keep feeling like we could be there and should be there. And there are a lot of other really good teams who are just as deserving as well. So we gotta figure that out and get over the hump. But an incredible season. I've coached 21 seasons and I've never gone undefeated before.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. In Division III, we often we have secondary duties, and one of our staffs is we do game management for our men's basketball team, and they do game management for us. And our men's basketball team is incredible. Has been top 10, top 15 in the country for the last couple of seasons. But this last weekend, they went 0-2 on an SCAC road weekend. And I think they're a team, who could be in a Final Four. and that just showed to me, we had a text chain going with our assistants, and we were just talking about like how incredible it was that we never had one of those, like we just had a clunker of a weekend,
Yeah.
and how impressive that is by our players. Um, we were 8-0, 8-0 or 9-0 on the road this year.
Mm.
Interestingly,
Yeah.
we were again, we didn't lose at home, but we tied 4 or 5 games at home. So we were incredible on the road, which I think that's a testament to our team and our staff for what they do and how they prepare. Yeah, but ultimately, it still feels a little empty when you could have been there at the end and you just weren't.
Yeah. I thought this was going to be the year. I really did. I couldn't tell you why, like, because you're so much closer to it, I couldn't pin it, but there were some things where I was just kind of like, when you beat Amherst, I thought, oh my gosh, at Amherst, I did not expect that result. And that was kind of an eye opener to me that I thought, you guys have legs. And anyhow, was there at any point during the season that you kind of said to yourself, like, wow, we got something going here that might be pretty unique, especially in consideration of your 21 years?
Yeah. Honestly, and probably coach speak, but like I felt it in the off season, felt it throughout the summer. We had an incredible from the time we lost in the NCAA tournament in 2023 till the time we started in
Mm-hmm.
2024. Our guys were bought in.
Yeah.
They knew we were returning nearly everyone.
Mm-hmm.
We lost a couple of players that were important to us, but we felt like we were bringing nearly everyone back, and we were, yeah, the guys had an incredible offseason, so that's their challenge right now is
Yeah.
hopefully doing that again. So I don't think there was any specific moment. Seasons take on the kind of life of their own, and so you need some early season results to start to feel that there's something there. We had to we played the first 2 games of our season without our All-American center back. Max Clivio had to miss the
Okay.
first 2 games, and so when we opened at MIT and at Williams, and when you come through that 2-0, and all of a sudden your best player hasn't even played a minute, you felt
Yeah.
pretty good about things, and
Yeah.
so yeah, and then no, and then you just I don't know, you get to October and you check and I kept looking at dates and like reminding our players to be enjoying the ride, because sometimes admittedly
Yeah.
when you're in this
When
in
you're
the
knee
world's
deep.
yeah,
Yeah.
when you're in it, you're just like you're worried that everyone in there is just like, well, at the end we have to try to win the national championship, and you stop,
Yeah.
and so we focus truly. I have that phrase, just want to know today, and so we just
Mm.
we just focus on that. But I mean, I kept looking at dates as like, oh my gosh, I've never been undefeated as a coach on
Yeah.
October 13th, and then it was October 20th, and then it was
Yeah.
November, and then it was,
Yeah.
and our staff jokes that like I kept saying that throughout the year, and so our staff jokes that like technically we're still undefeated. So
Yeah.
we went undefeated from early September 2024 at least until some point in 2025. So, but certainly didn't feel like that in late November when we lost on penalties to Buffalo
Yeah.
State.
We'll talk about that at the end. But I'm just
Yeah,
curious, like, all your again, because NESCAC, and I fully acknowledge like how tough it is, especially this year, how good some teams were
yeah.
and really stepped up. Um, like, what do you think your toughest match was? Yeah, that's this bulletin board stuff. So be careful.
No, I just don't think it's like a reality for me to pick a toughest match.
Uh huh.
There's some uh, one of our assistants, Adam Batista, after the NCAA tournament, he pointed this out to me. Um, we were the NESCAC regular season champions.
Champions. Yeah.
Connecticut College was the NESCAC tournament champions. Middlebury College was the number one MPI team in the country,
Country.
and
Yeah.
Amherst College won the national
National champ.
championship.
Yeah.
So, like, which of those teams is better than any other? I don't know. I mean, I would think that all the coaches would agree to this, but obviously I can't speak for them. Like, if you replayed the NESCAC tournament, it would probably have a different outcome. If you replayed the NCAA tournament, it would probably have a different outcome. And you
Yeah.
just have to try to win those things. And so,
Yeah.
and if you replayed the NESCAC regular season, which we won, it would probably have a different outcome.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There were points in the year where I thought we were the best. There was a large point where I thought Middlebury was the best.
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously Connecticut College and Amherst make the national championship game and ultimately prove to be the best in the NCAA tournament. But
Yeah.
the course of a season is, it's there's just multiple things, and so
Yeah.
the NCAA tournament is a cup tournament, right? Like you just
Yeah.
one loss and you're out, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah. One and done,
Amherst and
right?
Con
Yeah.
seem to be incredible at that tournament in recent
Yeah.
years, and so we've got to try to add that because we've been arguably the best regular season team, in my time at Tufts in the
Hmm.
NESCAC, and then we haven't made a Final Four. So
Yeah.
I need to figure that part out as a coach. But like you said, this year felt different. We didn't play with pressure or stress, and I thought we were really good.
Yeah.
Even when we lost, like I thought we had a good game. We just couldn't score a
Yeah.
goal, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I look back on that as like the same round that we got knocked out in the tournament. Amherst won on penalties, and then
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
weeks later they're winning the national championship. And so
Yeah.
there's just elements that it takes to get there, and that's on me and our staff and our players to figure out.
Hmm.
But we keep knocking on the door, and we are. I feel really good about where we're at, and so you hope the soccer gods agree with you one of
Yeah.
these years and help you go on one of those, and we'll do our best to make our own luck. But as far as best team we play, I mean, we also played Babson, who I think they're in the Elite Eight this year. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
Williams is really good, Bowden's really good. I don't,
Bowden's really
I
good.
genuinely like of the four teams I mentioned, Con, Williams, Tufts, or Con, Amherst, Tufts, Middlebury. Flip a coin, who's actually the best out of that.
And it could just be on the day. I always say at some point you get to the rarefied air, you're not talking about major differences. You know what I mean? It's like razor thin differences, and what matters in one game might not matter in the next game, and what makes a team good this game might not make the team good next game. And you're sort of hoping that, to your point, all this stuff falls together for you at the right times. Penalty kicks, right? Like you just need that luck, if it's luck, to get through that hurdle, kind of like what Amherst did, and then it sort of unfolds from there, right? Like I just think some of that is literally such razor thin margins that you're trying to exploit or be better at, or it's not easy. It's not
Yeah,
easy.
every team who made the Final Four had already won a round on penalties, and so we
Yeah,
went to penalties and we didn't win the
yeah,
round. So
yeah.
and some who won rounds on penalties then lose rounds on penalties the next time it happens, and so it's yeah. You hope it's not just a coin toss and total luck, and so you practice
Yeah,
them, you train them. We
yeah,
felt really good. We felt like we actually weren't very good when we went to penalties in the NESCAC quarterfinal,
uh huh,
but when we sort of tied and went out, admittedly, after like 2 hours, we were actually sort of okay with the NESCAC quarterfinal one because we were so banged up. We were missing three or four guys for the last month of the regular season, and
yeah,
so we never got Ethan Feigen back from his broken collarbone in the Middlebury game, but we
yeah.
we started to get some guys back, and so taking 2 weeks off before the NCAA tournament, we felt fresh and ready. No, I thought the stars were aligning for us to make a run, and
Yeah.
I was convinced when we went to penalties that we were going to win it and move on, and it just didn't happen.
You know, it's interesting. I looked to you. I don't know if it was you. I don't know if it was you who said that. That the you almost at some point, maybe it was you, or maybe I can't remember.
Sure.
Like if and this is something that I guess the formula, right? Like you're trying to figure out a formula. You don't want to win the NESCAC championship when you go into the NCAA's. I mean, you do. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like, hey, throw it away. Don't. But you don't want to win that because you need time to sort of like recover, rest and recover, so that when the tournament begins, you're at least somewhat more refreshed. Um,
Yeah, the
and
only the only team who's ever done both is the 2019 Tufts team, and
yeah,
that there's been I think seven SCAC national champs in the last whatever 9 or 10
yeah,
years,
yeah.
and only one of them has won both.
Won yeah, yeah. So
If
it
you want
makes
to win the national championship, don't win the NESCAC.
yeah. It's almost like yeah. That's what I mean. Like if you're doing sitting there and saying, how do I get the path to? I hate to say you want to throw away the two. You never want to do that, right? You want to win everything. I get that, but it's almost like that it could be a hindrance, right? Like of doing Middlebury won it. And look what happened to Middlebury. Con lost it, and look, I don't know. they made it to the final, but they lost the final. Amherst didn't make it, and they didn't make it to the final. And look, they win the national championship. And just something interesting to think about.
Yeah, I think
Again, especially compressed calendar games. A week, or you know what I mean? Like that's a lot of time.
it is. I think, yeah, no, if you lose in the quarterfinal, you don't play for 13 days. And so
Yeah,
we genuinely felt, obviously, I want to win the NESCAC championship.
yeah,
I was a player in the NESCAC, like we want to win that, but it is really hard to do both. And so
yeah,
we sort of felt like, because we technically didn't lose, and when you go out on
yeah,
penalties,
yeah, yeah.
you're still undefeated. We knew our NPI wasn't going to change. We were like firmly number two.
Yeah.
And that wasn't dropping, and so we were sort of, yeah. Obviously, we want to win it, but like we were sort of okay. I think five of the seven NESCAC national champs lost in the NESCAC tournament in the quarterfinal.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's like the Big East basketball tournament used to be. No
yeah,
one ever
yeah,
needs to win that and then
yeah.
do
And
well in
then
the
when,
NCAA
yeah,
tournament.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just interesting to think about. Like I said, you can't. I mean, I'd question your sanity if you kind of threw away the
Yeah, yeah.
NESCAC tournament because you think you're going to reach this final because of whatever. I think that's silly because there is something about being competitive as often as you can that helps you sharpen. But anyhow, I just meant more for the injuries and whatnot. I'm going to sidetrack here because you brought it up, not me. Um, NPI rankings,
Sure.
unadulterated, controversial thoughts about MPI. Did you think it, like, what are your thoughts as a coach sitting on the outside looking at how all of these numbers get formulated?
First, take this as I am not NESCAC centric. I coached outside of the NESCAC for 17 years, and
Yeah, yeah,
so um, I am not. I don't know. Obviously there's a NESCAC bias and an anti-NESCAC bias, but I hope that I genuinely don't have a NESCAC bias because I was on the other side of it for 17 years. Um, and sort of, when I'm coaching at Ithaca College and you're in 2018, I thought we should have been in the NCAA tournament. We weren't in the NCAA tournament. And then you
yeah.
look and you say, oh, six NESCAC teams got
How
in.
did they do it? Yeah, yeah,
Well, yeah, I mean, this year I can tell you that sixth, seventh, eighth NESCAC teams were pretty good.
yeah,
I think there are some weird parts to it. I think I'm not convinced that a couple of the teams that got in both in the NESCAC and outside of the NESCAC necessarily belong in, just based on like at some point you should have to win a few more games.
yeah,
But the algorithm is the algorithm. You know the you do definitely really get rewarded for a massive victory.
yeah,
Um, and so when you look at like the case of like a Hamilton was really good. They had
yeah,
an incredible senior class. They were 20 seconds away from beating Kenyon and making the Sweet 16.
yeah,
And I think
yeah,
they're probably the one that everyone questions the most out of the
yeah,
out of the teams from the NESCAC that made it. And again, they were 20 seconds away from being in the Sweet
yeah,
16 if they could have just held on against Kenyon. Um, but Hamilton had a win over Williams, who was like the number five NPI team in the country, and so that's like the secret trick is you have to win. You have to win a big game or
yeah,
two. But I don't know. I think we're locked into the way that it works for
yeah,
the next two seasons, is my understanding.
yeah,
And then I'm sure there'll be tweaks to it. Sort of the men's soccer side, we had like the 10 game minimum piece.
mhm,
And the women's soccer side had the 8 game, and that seemed to impact it. I think for whatever reason, like the NESCAC didn't have as much power on the women's side, but had the UAA had
yeah,
it worked out well for them. So I will say I do really like knowing where you're at. I think that is
that's a
a
good point.
very nice piece to the whole puzzle. Is in the middle of October, you pretty much know where you stand, and there's none of that last couple of weeks, and
That's
yeah,
interesting. If I can interject, we forget about that going back, especially as you're trying to forecast and go forward, like how you're going to do, how's it going to shape out the next couple of weeks and all that. Like you were pretty much like pretty much in the dark. You could do some math on your own, but there was no guaranteeing anything in that regard
yeah, you never felt
before MPI. Yeah, yeah,
genuinely, you never felt comfortable until you
yeah,
saw it announced on
yeah,
even if
yeah,
you'd heard through the grapevine that you were okay,
yeah, yeah,
until you saw it announced on that
yeah,
selection show. I think the one major positive that I would say, and I mean, who knows what's happening with college sports and
Hmm.
NCAA these
Oh
days,
my
but
gosh.
yeah, that's beyond me. That's for you to dissect. I saw you did a thing a few weeks ago.
I'll fix it.
But that the one really, really big positive I thought was seeding the top 8 teams and allowing the right teams to host.
Yeah,
I think that's a really nice change, and obviously comes with potentially some some costs that they have to deal with
yeah.
that are larger than normal. But I thought that was great, and having the top 8 seeds firm, and if you were a one
Legit
or
be
if you were a one or
hosting.
a two
Yeah,
seed, you couldn't play another 1 or 2 seed until
yeah,
the
yeah,
Elite Eight Final Four, which I think made
yeah,
sense.
yeah. I I think that the one thing, and again, I'm kind of like in your boat. I'm not sure how all the different levers work, but I'm the only thing that strikes me is, yeah, like victories, wins matter. Winning big matters more, and I'm not sure how all the other games get handled. Like, not that you don't want to, but can you create a schedule that is much more favorable to you and get the MPI rating that you want based on a schedule that might be lighter than before, where everyone knew that if you wanted to make the tournament, you had to compete, but you also had to compete against the best teams that you could.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I don't know if that.
Yeah, I think there's. I mean, I think there's basically 2 ways to do it now.
Mm-hmm.
You have a schedule. I mean, like any of ours in the NESCAC are always going to be super
Right.
strong, top 10
Yeah.
strength of schedules,
Yep.
just because of the league we play in, and then having Babson next door
Yeah. It's
and
easy
some
for you.
and
Yeah.
some
I
good.
understand. Yeah.
So the 2 ways that seem to be the way to do it are have a really strong strength of schedule, and you don't have to win them all, but you got to win a few of them, of the big ones. Or the opposite is actually play a pretty weak schedule and just
Yeah.
win all of them.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like you could. Yeah. Whereas before, the week schedule did nothing for you. If anything, it detracted from your ability to, even if you won them,
Yeah,
right? Like, and I think I just go back to somebody like West Con 2, 3 years ago, where they
yeah,
went undefeated, and that wasn't good enough for them because they lost in the tournament final, or they lost in penalties again. Sort of, they didn't lose, but that wasn't enough for them because um, their RPI wasn't high enough.
yeah. And
So
I'm all for teams like that getting in. I think in all the iterations that they did when they were piloting this and testing this, like that WestCon team did get in
yeah.
in the new system. And I coached at Norwich University for 10 years, and
Oh yeah.
there was a
Yeah.
year where um, we were 18-2-1, and
Mm-hmm.
we were actually really close. We were like the seventh or eighth ranked team in New England in the old system,
Yeah.
and we didn't get in. And I think in this day and age we would have gotten in. And so
Yeah.
I'm for those teams. I think those teams. I don't think you should be overly punished because you play in a certain league.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
long as you're winning all your games, like you can't lose 4 or 5 games, but
Yeah.
you can go undefeated or lose one game.
Yeah.
I'm for
Yeah.
those teams getting in.
Yeah. I'm a same. I think winning matters. I think winning over time matters more. I think winning your schedule matters even more, right? Like your schedule is your schedule, and it's hard to do that over consistently over time, no matter what your schedule looks like.
Yeah,
And I do think, to your point, rewarding those guys.
yeah,
We can go down this
yeah,
track
yeah.
like a lot, and so I'll just step back from there. Okay. All right. First, just tell me about the Bowdoin game and sort of where you guys were at. It sounded like you were dealing with some knocks and some injuries, and as you went into that, I mean, just give me a sense as to what you guys were up against when you
The
played Bowdoin.
NESCAC quarterfinal Bowdoin
Yeah,
game.
yeah,
'Cause we
yeah.
uh, we have the Scott Wersinski, the Bowdoin coach, is one of my good friends in
Uh-huh.
coaching. But this has happened a bunch with Bowdoin and Tufts. But 3 of my 4 seasons at Tufts, we have
Mm-hmm.
played Bowdoin on the last Tuesday, and we've played them 4 days later on the Saturday. It's something actually pretty wild. It's like seven
Yeah.
of the last 10 years that has happened.
Mm,
At every different seed, 1-8, 2-7,
yeah.
all of that. Yeah, I think going into the Bowdoin game, so we had just tied them
Yeah.
in a um, in a last regular season game on a Tuesday night. We felt good about it going into the playoffs because Bowdoin, they had to travel home Tuesday night. We
Come
we,
back.
we were at home both games, and so we
Yeah.
felt good about it. Um, I think Bowdoin was an interesting team this year because they were very, very talented. They kind of had, I don't know, they just had this like odd up and down season it seemed. But
Hmm.
when they put it together, they were really good. I think very much an NCAA tournament team, and yeah, we felt we'd been missing. When we played Middlebury, we lost a bunch of guys, which can happen in an SCAC game, I guess. And yeah, so we had played probably our best two attacking players all season, Xavier Canfin and Ethan Fagan. Ethan never came back, but Xavier came back for the playoffs. We got a couple other guys back, but we felt good about it. But sort of to our earlier conversation, we knew we were like the great position that we were in for the NCAA tournament, and we also know how deep we are and how good our subs are.
Hmm.
So I committed to our guys that however long the NESCAC tournament went, we were going to go deeper than we normally would have. And so
Really?
we played
Wow.
like 22 guys in the Bowdoin
Yeah, yeah,
quarterfinal.
yeah.
Whereas
Not
in
that
the
that's a bad thing. I didn't realize that.
yeah, because it wasn't for us with the position we were in. I don't want to say the NESCAC isn't a big deal because it's a massive deal,
Yeah,
but like we've won the NESCAC.
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, we had bigger aspirations this year, and we also felt like our subs genuinely are good enough that we can win
yeah,
NESCAC
yeah,
tournament
yeah,
going 22 players deep. And I wasn't going to risk injury. Yeah, I think we probably only played two guys for 90 minutes in that Bowdoin game, so
hmm,
we used a lot of guys, and they were good. But yeah, went to penalties, and in that moment, I was incredibly, incredibly disappointed because you've
yeah,
lost and you're not moving on. And we had when you win the regular season, hosting a NESCAC Final Four is a really cool
yeah,
thing to do. And so we were excited about that. Our players were excited about that, but we knew we needed to get there, and we knew it wasn't going to be easy. And Bowdoin was playing for their life at that point. And
yeah,
I do think I don't know. In college sports, I do think there is a slight difference when your season's potentially over and you lose, and
yeah.
then or you're the number two team in the country.
The psychology of it could have been enough for not like where you guys just sort of were disarmed a little bit, and they were like fully amped up because they're like our season's on the line,
Yeah,
right? Like yeah, yeah.
100%. And they were very good. They have a great junior class. They'll all be
Hmm.
seniors next year. And no, it was a good game. It could have gone either way. And then went to penalties, and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
we didn't come through. So we lost twice on penalties this year. So I know my friend Craig Appleby is trying to change the world of how to take penalty kicks, and so
He
um,
lost too, by the way, but
I know, but he won and then he lost. So he had
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I don't know. I've trained penalty kicks 10 different ways in 21 years, and still trying to figure out how to do that best.
I always say no. Again, penalty kicks are about the keeper; they're not about the shooter. I think that is it. Like if you can get
Really.
a keeper who knows what he's doing and can really mentally put the shooters on notice that they have to really beat him. I think that's more of the formula than finding the right five guys who practice enough.
Yeah.
But I'm a goalkeeper, so
Yeah.
that would be the default position of that. So
And I was a striker who was
yeah.
too scared to take penalties. So,
At least you're honest.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that happens. You get the what is it? 13 days, 10 days, whatever it was
Yeah.
to get ready. You play Westfield State in the opening round. You beat them 2-1, and then you go up against Buffalo State. And sort of where were you guys at that point going to play to? Well, going. You were at home, but to
Yeah.
play Buffalo State.
Yeah, we felt great. We we had no. I mean, ultimately we went out. We have absolutely no excuses. We played the night game. I guess the NCAA like
Yeah.
asked because of the huddle contract. I don't. It feels strange
Okay.
that Division III, like we're dealing with like TV contracts and
Contracts.
like for commercial money and things. But I guess we were asked to play our games at night, which is what it is. Um, So we were, I mean, more or less in the second day, we were just sitting around all day waiting for 7 p.m. to get there,
Hmm.
or 6 p.m. I think the game was at 6. But no, I mean, listen, we felt really good about it. The day before had been a little harder than we wanted it to be, but
Hmm.
I sometimes think that's better for you than
Yeah.
winning 5-0
Yeah.
and not really feeling like the NCAA tournament has started. Westfield State did a great job and scored a goal against us. We conceded 6 goals all year or whatever, and so scored a goal, made it challenging. And so the next day we were ready for it. We were into it. We were awesome. I mean, Buffalo State, all credit to them. They hung in there and ultimately get the win on penalties. But I mean, they didn't touch the ball for the first 43 minutes of the game. And then we make one mistake. We
Yeah.
play in,
Yeah.
we hit a pass against one of our defenders, and all of a sudden their All-American striker who scored 20
Yeah.
goals this season has a 45-yard breakaway.
Yeah.
And so you're going into halftime down a goal. Our guys were confident. I mean, obviously we never lost this year, so we always came back. But we had trailed. I guess we trailed 5 times this season, and
Hmm.
all 5 times we tied up the game within 15 minutes.
Hmm.
And so we were very confident that we were going to come back, and sure enough, we did. Um, I think we put Max Clivio scored. I think he was playing center forward the second half of that, our All-American center back. That's probably my one regret. Maybe after we scored to tie it up, I maybe should have just left him up there. I've thought about that, but we have other guys that I thought would score.
Yeah.
But yeah, we tie it up, and then again the game has just swung, and it's all us for the next
Yeah.
30 minutes of regulation, 20 minutes of overtime. There's only one team that's going to win it. There's this one play that you look back on, and a ball bounced across the goal line. We have a player standing on the post. The ball hits the post right in front of him, and he just chose not to touch it. And then afterwards, obviously,
Yeah.
why didn't we try to put that one in? And just you're in that moment, and I know that
Yeah.
moment as a player, and
Yeah.
you just said, "Coach, it was going in. I don't know what
Yeah.
happened. Like it spun out."
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and yeah, and then in the overtime, we went for it. I know how I'm not playing for penalty after losing to Bowdoin in penalty kicks. We were not playing for penalty kicks.
Yeah.
We were aggressive. We were trying to win. I think you and I spoke about this before. I do think in hindsight, some of our players made some maybe wrong decisions. You can say afterwards, we were too willing to shoot from 30 yards
Yeah. Yeah.
in that
That's
game.
yeah. Yeah. There's a
Yeah, and
couple
I
things I
think
noticed. That was one of them.
no, we were, and I think I think the player who did it was Liam Gherkin. He was shooting a bunch. Liam Gherkin is one of my all-time favorite players. We have an unbelievable relationship. He was a fifth-year senior. I'd rather have the guy who's too eager and trying to take it on
Yeah.
himself
Yeah.
than the guy who just passes it backwards or doesn't want
Yep.
that
Yep.
moment. And so
Yeah.
I totally understand why he was doing that.
Yeah.
He scored 4 goals this season from outside the box. He was just trying to win us the game. And when you watch back the film, you're like, oh, I think if we could have slipped somebody in there, and you're in. And
Hmm.
yeah, no, you need.
Woulda,
I don't
coulda,
know.
shoulda. Woulda,
Yeah, you
coulda,
need
shoulda.
luck in
Yeah.
overtime. In overtime, Xavier Campton got played in on a breakaway from
Yeah.
midfield, and the AR put his flag up, and you watch it
I
back, and he was
remember
two
that
yards on.
one.
He's 2 yards onside. It's not
He
even
was
close.
not even close.
You,
Even at the
you-
time, I was like, "What is the? Why are they stopping?"
yeah, and obviously, who knows? Maybe he goes on a breakaway and he doesn't
Yeah.
score, or he trips while he's running or whatnot. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know. It takes luck, and we're gonna keep putting ourselves in that position. And we were devastated that night.
Yeah.
Not a single person that had any. We knew we could lose because it's soccer, and you always know you
Yeah.
can lose, and you respect your opponent. Buff State had 2 really good attacking players.
Yeah.
Their goalkeeper and their 2 center backs played out of their minds and just
Yeah.
kept repelling chance after chance after chance from
Yeah.
us.
The goalkeeper stood on his head.
Yeah, he was great.
y-
He
You
was
know.
he was really good. Yeah, and that was. I guess I've had a few at other programs I've been at, conference championship losses where an at-large bid isn't a possibility and whatnot. But that was one of the most, certainly a top 3 most devastating defeat that
Mhm.
I've experienced as a coach because, like you said, we were good enough to compete for a national championship, and all of a sudden it just ended out of the blue.
I thought when you tied, I thought goals are coming.
Yeah.
When you tied the game up, I'm like, okay, everybody's feeling good, tied up the game, Buffalo State is done. And at one point in the second half, maybe it was like 10 minutes left or whatever, you guys were knocking the ball around trying to find the seams. And I looked at to figure out what Buffalo State was doing, and they were basically a line of 10 guys. Like just you're going to have to get through all 10 of us from 35 yards out or something. I was just kind of like, oh, that's when you notice, oh, it's a little, they're making it really, really hard. And like I said, the goalkeeper did fantastic. And then there were the moments where I thought, what you were talking about, just the anxiousness of wanting to score. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it, but like that feeling like I have to score, and that is never the place you want to be. You want it to be more like, hey, I have an opportunity I can take advantage of, right? And like it's just different frame of mind. But I thought you guys were I mean, credit to Buffalo State. I thought you guys were definitely the better team there.
Yeah, I mean, soccer's about who scores goals, and they scored one on us, and like I said, their coach has done an amazing job there, and they deserve.
I was impressed with Buffalo State all season,
much.
Well, most of the season, but yeah,
very much. I can tell they were good. Their winger, 18 or 20 assists. Their striker, 18 or 20 goals.
Diego Rivera guy.
Diego Rivera,
he's really good.
I saw his name in the transfer portal at one point, so I'm sure a lot of people are after him.
Really? Oh, wow.
But he's a good player. He's a very. They had a great season. I think the next weekend it was always going to like they came out to us and then they had to drive down to wherever they went to, Pennsylvania. And like it must have been a lot for them.
I'd say like in their. Like it's a very hard road because they're not in the position to sort of dictate how they go through the tournament, right? They're just sort of at the whims of however the draw goes. Whereas I think you guys, had you won, like you're in the driver's seat. You know what I mean? Like everything is laid out for you that you could have made it to the Final Four. I was expecting you guys to make at least the Final Four. That's terrible to say. I wasn't expecting anything, but I thought you guys were good enough to get there.
Yeah, no, we would have been at home, and
I'm not from the NESCAC. I'm not a Tufts guy, like despite the hat. Hey, so just want to be cognizant of your time. Like, what? Just for like, where do you? It's not. This sounds overly dramatic. Of course, I'm a YouTube influencer, so I have to do this. But
be dramatic.
I'm going to be dramatic. Like, where do you go from here? Like, what's the next step? Like, you got to put that, hate to say it, you got to be like, we're this close, right? You were penalty kicks close.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you do? What do you go from here for the spring? And
ultimately, we don't, I don't think we changed much. I really don't. You and I talked at one point about, like, obviously, after a season, you do a deep dive and you watch film. You and your assistants, and you talk with your players, and you think about things that could have been different. Like we didn't lose a game all season. Like no team beat us at soccer, and we play as hard of a schedule as you can play in Division III soccer. So it'd be easy to just be, because we didn't win the national championship, it'd be easy to say we got to change this and this and this. Worst, don't get me wrong, we talked about that as coaches. We had the whiteboard out yesterday, and we're going over our tactics for our next game in 7 months, legitimately. Not knowing, fully who our recruiting class is, not knowing, all these things. So I don't think we changed much. I think we got better at scoring goals this year, which was something we needed to do. I still think we can get better there. But like looking back at our season, we did some analysis on it. Like there was one NESCAC game that a lot of teams scored a bunch of goals, and so it kind of skews like the NESCAC statistics. But if you removed that game from, some teams scored 6, 7, 8 goals in that one game. But if you just removed that game from all the teams in the NESCAC, we scored the most goals in the league and we conceded the fewest. So that's a pretty good recipe for success. I think more than anything, what we need to figure out and get better at is how we play, in the NESCAC, like those games are 50-50. There's,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, you're not playing any of the top NESCAC teams, and like you have the ball for 80% of the game, they have the
no,
ball.
no.
It just doesn't
You just
happen.
adapt to whatever the game's given you, and you're trying to win under those circumstances.
Yeah, and then a few of the non-conference, sometimes we get that where we have all of the ball, and so
Hmm.
the NCAA tournament, sometimes that happens. Like those first two games this year, like we're gonna have the ball in those moments, so we're gonna have to break down a low block, and so
Yeah,
it's just like, yeah, I mean, we train for it. You try to prepare for it, but when teams put 10 guys behind the ball, it is hard to score in soccer and in
yeah,
college
yeah,
soccer.
yeah.
You see it all
In
the
any
time.
soccer, yeah,
You see,
yeah,
yeah, you see it all the time at every
yeah,
level.
yeah,
Um, and so, but that's what we need to get better at. We do need to figure out how to break down a low block, and
yeah,
when we have to make the majority of the game,
yeah,
we've got to get better at that. Because I think when we don't have to make the game and the game's 50-50, we're really, I mean, we're incredible
yeah,
at that. So
yeah,
we seem to struggle more when we have 70%
yeah,
possession
yeah.
than we do when we have 50% possession. So we got to get better there, and guys will be hungry for it.
That's what I meant. I think you just said what I meant when we were emailing back
Yeah.
when we first started talking. When you have 70% of the possession, almost like your sense is we're getting to goals so easily that we should score, and it forces you to think differently rather than being like, we have 70% of the possession, we have to do something with the ball, right?
Yeah.
Like it has to be productive. I think that's what I was trying to say. Not that I think you need to blow up anything or change
Yeah.
anything. You know what I mean? Like that to me, that's a great observation because it is a different. When you have 70% of the ball, that is not your NESCAC schedule. That's not 90% of your schedule.
Yeah.
Is having
No,
70% of the ball, right? And so that different, like, how do you manage that? I just think is really the question.
yeah, and I think some of that can be honestly personnel. And I probably need to be braver and more willing to play guys. We don't need two holding midfielders and four defenders staying back
Yeah.
in those games, and so
Hmm.
that's some of that's on me. And then yeah, I mean we're a very very athletic team, and we like to play in transition. And so when the game doesn't have transition, how do you score goals?
Yeah. It's perplexing. And I mean that in a good way, right? You're a soccer player. I know most of my success when we're in transition. We're going on the attack. We don't have transition points at this game because we have the ball all the time. So how does that work? And they're so pressed back. Like how do you go through that? That's interesting. I'm going to be thinking about that for a while. I will share
Yeah,
you my thoughts, whether you like it or not.
no, I like any and all thoughts.
Yeah, yeah,
I appreciate. Yeah, and so I think that's on us because
hmm,
obviously it's how you play in the final third, but
yeah,
perhaps we need to actually be more patient, like in our defensive third,
yeah,
and actually try to pull teams out more and
yeah,
give
yeah,
ourselves more
yeah.
space to play in.
Give you,
Because I
yeah,
don't any college soccer's hard, and yeah, any team that puts 10 guys behind the ball, they are
yeah,
in a third of the field. It is hard to break that down at any
yeah,
level.
yeah, yeah. That I agree with, and I just go back to again, like I'm glad you're not sort of going to the laboratory to experiment with 50 different things because you were 12-0-6, right? You did not lose a game. You did not lose a game.
Yeah, I think
There's
yeah,
something to be said. Strip away everything else. Who you tied, who you lost some peak. It doesn't matter. You didn't lose a game. Like that to me is significant, right? That's the so anyhow.
yeah. Obviously, like I said, you're looking for silver linings, and we looked up after the season. We're the fourth NESCAC team ever to not lose a game all season.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
our guys should be really proud of what
yeah,
they.
yeah, yeah,
It didn't end with the trophy that we wanted, but yeah, we talk about our players. We play for four trophies, is sort of how they look at it.
uh-huh.
The NESCAC regular season, we play a cup competition. When we play Amherst, it's for a cup.
Uh-huh.
Mo Ziden Cup. Mo was a player at Amherst College who then went
Uh-huh.
to graduate school at Tufts, who unfortunately was killed in a biking
Oh.
accident. Really, really sad, but a great way to honor him between
Uh-huh.
Tufts and Amherst. So
Uh,
the NESCAC regular season, the Mo Ziden Cup, the NESCAC playoffs, and the NCAA tournament. And obviously the NESCAC tournament and the NCAA tournament are the two biggest ones.
Yeah.
But we won two of the four cups we played
Yeah,
for this
yeah.
year. So our
That's
guys,
awesome.
our guys should still be very pleased.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You'll get there. I don't doubt that. Like I see the talent. Like you're at different at in other conferences, even your top your numbers, 11 through 15 could be starters elsewhere. You know what I mean? Like and be a really good team in their own right. So I think you have all the elements. It's just like you said. What are those? Like what we said earlier. What are those little things that need to bounce your way
Yeah.
to get you there? So.
Tough,
And as
tough, Tufts won 4 national championships in 6 years at one point. So I'm just,
yeah,
I'm just
it's
worried that
yeah,
the luck was
yeah,
given during that time. So we got to get some of
yeah,
it back.
yeah. The soccer gods are like, oh, you're gonna have to wait a little bit. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, you're gonna have to wait a little bit. That's
Now, when you talk to any of the alumni from those teams, they're obviously very proud and very
yeah,
know how good they were, but they all talk about how we won this game that we shouldn't have won, or like the other.
yeah.
They were on a breakaway and they hit the post, and next thing you
So
know, we go
lucky,
down. It's like it's just our sport is such tight margins
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But you make your own luck. All the teams that
yeah.
get there end up making their own luck. So we got to keep trying.
Very good, Coach. I'm fully confident in you and your men. So,
Thanks.
a vote of confidence from the Garden State of New Jersey. So,
Appreciate it.
hey, thanks for this. Do appreciate it as always, and we'll catch up again maybe before the season kicks off, and we can make some brutal predictions about how you're going to do.
That sounds great. We'll be ready and excited for it.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me on. I really
yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Coach.